For August 22nd, August 22nd, Wednesday. We're learning Berakhot. We're on Daf 22, Amud Bet. It's Daf Chaf Bet, Amud Bet. And we were discussing the question of whether or not a seminal emission renders somebody impure, unfit to study Torah. It's clearly a seminal emission renders someone impure, and the impurity of a seminal emission is taken away from immersion in a mikveh. Another way perhaps another way to remove it is 9 kav of water. Question is, we learned the opinion that one needs to pour the water, to actually pour the water on oneself, the 9 kav, as opposed to bathing in it, immersing in it, while as with the mikveh, one cannot have the mikveh water poured on him, rather he needs to immerse in the water. So Michti Kula Amarayu Tanai Be'ezrata Kami Plagi Benechasu Ezra Hechitaken. Up until now, discussion is focused on various problems pertaining to the laws of immersion as they concern one whose impurity is due to a seminal emission. Gemara asks, since all the Amoraim and Tanaim disagree with regard to the decree of Ezra, let us now examine how Ezra instituted the ordinance. Let's see how Ezra established the ordinance. As this is not an uncommon circumstance, as we can see how they conducted themselves. Amar Abaye, Ezra taken levari hamar gil arba'im sa. Ezra did not, according to Abaye, Ezra did not institute a sweeping ordinance concerning every case of one who experienced a seminal emission, which we'll hear to from now on we'll return to it as keri, a seminal emission. Rather, he instituted that only a healthy person who experienced a normal seminal emission is required to immerse himself in 40 seah. Va'atu Amorayu pligi b'chole, and the Amoraim came and disagreed with regard to a sick person. Mar savar chole hamargil kavari hamargil. One sage held that a sick person who experienced a nocturnal seminal emission is considered like a healthy person who experienced a normal seminal emission. V'chole la'onso kavari la'onso. While a sick person who experienced an involuntary seminal emission is considered like a healthy person who experienced an involuntary seminal emission. Umar savar chole hamargil kavari leonso, v'chole leonso pator mikulam. However, another sage maintained that a sick person who experienced a normal seminal emission is considered like a healthy person who experienced an involuntary seminal emission, and consequently requires only that 9 kav can be poured over him. That's all he needs, is the 9 kav. Who? Another sage says that a sick person who had a normal emission, I was supposed to say keri, a sick person who had a normal keri is considered like a healthy person who had an involuntary keri. And that would only require the pouring of 9 kav of water. Now, how much is a kav? A kav is a basic unit of measurement from which many other small units are derived. A kav is equivalent to 1/6 of a seah. In other words, or 24 egg bulks. So 1/6 of 24. That would be 4 egg bulks. So, in other words, sizes 4 medium-sized eggs is a kav. So imagine the size of 4 eggs. That's a kav. Multiply that by 9, that's 9 kav. Not a whole lot of water. Your average natlan for Netilei Yadayim, I think, is about a kav. It's probably a little more even. So if somebody takes one of those natlans, the normal Netilat Yadayim things that you see in a lot of religious homes, that size, it's much more than a revius. it'd be 10 times the revis. And we're not going to get into the details of the measurements now. But nine of those, big cups of water poured over somebody. 4 egg bulk sized cups of water. So, Amar Rava, Nehi detaken Ezra Tvila, Nitina mitaken. Rava said, although Ezra instituted immersion for one experienced to carry, did he institute the pouring of 9 kav? Nitina is pouring. V'hamarmar, Ezra taken tvila levale krayin. Did not the master say that we have a tradition that Ezra only instituted immersion for those who experienced seminal emission? Rather, Rava said, Ela Amar Rava, Ezra taken tvila levari hamargil arba'im sa. Rather, Rava said we must explain the diverse opinions developed after Ezra's decree. Ezra himself instituted immersion in 40 sa only for a healthy person who experienced a normal seminal emission. Va'atu Rabbanan v'hitkinu levari l'onso tisha kabin. And then the sages came and instituted that healthy person who experienced an involuntary seminal emission should have 9 kav poured over him. Va'atu amorai v'kam mipalgi. And then the Amoraim came and disagreed with regard to a sick person. Mar savar chole hamargil kavari hamargil. One sage held that a sick person who experienced a normal carry is considered like a healthy person who experienced a normal carry. While Marsavar, where was I? Marsavar chole hamargil kavari hamargil. V'chole lonso kavari lonso. While a sick person who experienced an involuntary carry is considered like a healthy person who experienced an involuntary carry. Marsavar levari hamargil arbim sa v'chole hamargil kavari lonso tisha kabin. Aval chole lonso potor mikulam. Another sage maintained that only a healthy person who experienced a normal carry is required to immerse himself in 40 seah, while a sick person who experienced a normal carry is considered like a healthy person who experienced an involuntary carry, requiring only 9 kav. But a sick person who experienced an involuntary carry is exempt from any form of immersion or purification. So, what is this thing about 40 seah? Rabbi Steinsaltz explains, a seah is 1/30th of a kor, or the equivalent of 144 egg bulks. So imagine the size of 144 eggs. That's called a seah. This is the minimum amount of water required for a ritual bath. 144 times 40. That would be 5,760 egg bulks. A container large enough to hold 40 seah or more is no longer considered to be a utensil, but rather a building of sorts. This has ramifications in areas of halacha like ritual impurity and prohibited labor in Shabbat. The 40 seah measure is the basis of all modern calculations of the various measures of volume. The Talmud tells us that the dimensions of a ritual bath must be 3 cubits by 1 cubit. And that is the volume of 40 seah. Consequently, according to the Na'eh scale, the system of Rabbi Avraham Na'eh, one of the great rabbis of the Bukharim neighborhood in Jerusalem, he was an expert in measurements and is widely regarded among all the Jews in the world. He and the Chazon Ish are the 2 experts on measurements for our generation and a number of generations, really. According to the Na'eh scale of this Rabbi Na'eh, a ritual bath must contain 332 liters of water. That's 87 gallons of water. And according to the Chazon Ish, who has larger measurements than Rabbi Na'eh, it's 573 liters or 151 gallons of water. So a Chazon Ish mikveh is bigger. That's a lot of water, 151 gallons. And it's a lot more than 24 egg yolks. So, sorry, 4 times 9, that would be 36 egg bolts of water is not a lot compared to 151 gallons. So there's quite a difference between 9 kav and the 40 seh. Amar Rava, Hilchata Bari Hamargil V'choli Hamargil Arbim Saha. Rava stated that the halakhic ruling is in accordance with the first opinion. A healthy person who experienced a normal carry and a sick person who experienced a normal carry require 40 seah, while a healthy person who experienced an involuntary carry, it suffices to use 9 kav. But a sick person who experienced an involuntary carry is exempt from undergoing any rite of purification. Taner Rabbanan, the sages taught in Tosefta, Bal Kerish Natnu Alab Tisha Kabin Mayim Tahor. One who experienced a carry and have 9 kav drawn water poured over him is ritually pure. B'medvarim Omrim La'atzmo. In what case is this statement said? In a case involving Torah study for himself. Remember, we're talking about making a person pure from a seminal emission in order to be able to study Torah. But in order to purify himself to teach Torah to others, lacharim arba'im sa'ah. For others, he must immerse himself in 40 seah in a kosher ritual bath. Omer, Rabbi Yehuda Omer arba'im sa'ah mikol makom. According to Rabbi Yehuda, in any case, he needs to immerse himself in a kosher ritual bath of 40 seah. Between 87 and 151 gallons of water in a kosher mikveh. Rabbi Yochanan v'Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi v'Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Chanina chad mehai zuga v'chad mehai zuga aresha. With regard to this issue, a dispute arose between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Chanina. One member of this pair and one member of this pair, that pair, disagreed with regard to the first clause of the Tosefta. Chad amar, had amart b'mei devarim amorim la'atzmo aval lecharim arbim sa'ah lo shanu ela l'chol hamargil. One said, that which you said, in what case is the statement said? In what case is the statement said? In a case involving Torah study for himself. In order to purify himself that he may teach Torah to others, he must immerse himself in 40 seah. That whole statement was only taught regarding a sick person who experienced a normal carry. But a sick person who experienced an involuntary carry of alachole lonso tisha kabim. But a sick person who had an involuntary carry, 9 kav is sufficient even for teaching others. And that's one opinion. And one said, Chadamar kol la'acherim afilu l'chol lonso ad de'ika arbim sa. One said that, and the other said that anyone teaching others, even if he was a sick person and it was an involuntary carry, he is not considered pure until there are 40 seah. V'chad mehai zuga asef. Chadamar Rabbi Yehuda arbim sa mikol makom. And one member of the pair and one member of that pair disagreed with regard to the latter clause in the Tosefta. One said that which Rabbi Yehuda said, 40 seah in any case, was only taught when the water is in the ground. Lo shanu ela b'karka, aval b'kelim lo. It's only when the water is in the ground, meaning in accordance with the Torah law of ritual bath, but not if it was collected in vessels. And one said, V'chadamar afilu b'kelim nami, even 40 seah collected in vessels is sufficient for purification. So there was one opinion was stricter, saying it has to be a kosher ritual bath. Another said, no, it's enough that even it has to be that amount of water. Yes, 40 seah. 87 to 151 gallons. However, it need not be in a ritual bath. It could be the same amount of water in vessels, in jugs, jars, containers of any sort. The Gemara clarifies this problem. Granted, according to the one who said 40 seah purifies even in vessels, that is why the Tosefta taught Hainu de Katani Rabbi Yehuda Omer Arbi'im Sa Mikol Makom. That is why the Tosefta taught Rabbi Yehuda says 40 seah in any case. Ela Lamanda Marbakarka. However, according to the one who said Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that 40 seah are in the ground, meaning a kosher ritual bath structure. Karka in the Kalim lo. According to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, according to the one who said that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is 40 seah in the ground, yes, it purifies. But in vessels, no, it does not purify. So in such a case, what does the expression Mikol Makom Datui Mai? Mikol Makom, the expression, what does the expression in any case come to include? The expression in any case is, where did he say in any case? Up above, remember what we said? We said again, Tanar Rabbanan, Bal Kerish Nabnu Alav Tisha Kavim. Someone who had a keri. It had 9 kav poured over him. This is the Tosefta again. We're going to read it one more time so it's crystal clear. Somebody who has a keri. He has 9 kav of water poured over him. He is ritually pure. The Tosefta continues, B'mei Dvarim Amorim, in what case is that applicable? La'atzmo. In a case involving Torah study for himself. Aval acharim arba'im sa. But if he wants to teach Torah others, he has to go to a mikveh. Rabbi Yehuda Omer arba'im sa mikol makom. Rabbi Yehuda said arba'im sa in any case. So some say that means either whether the water is in the mikveh in the grounds, or whether it's in the mikveh in vessels. 40 seah of water collected in vessels. In other words, I think it's pretty clear that it means that it could be poured over him, as opposed to him immersing in the structure of the ritual bath. But the same amount of water is required. So if it's enough, even in vessels, then what does the Tosefta mean, Mikol Makom, in any case? But another opinion that says Rabbi Yehuda said in any case in the grounds, not meaning in vessels, and then in the ground it would purify, and in vessels it wouldn't purify, then what is Mikol Makom? Or initially we thought it meant either in the ground or in the vessels, Mikol Makom. Now we say that some say Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's in the ground, but it's not in the vessels. Only it's kosher if he goes in the ground, but not if he pours it on in 40 seah from vessels. So it comes, the Gemara answers, Latui Mayim Shu'uvim. The Gemara explains in any case, Mikol Makom comes to include drawn water, as Rabbi Yehuda permits immersion in 40 seah of water collected in the ground, even if the water was drawn by human hands. Now what is this about drawn water? First of all, let's understand a little bit about the mikveh, the ritual bath. Regarding, Rabbi Steinsaltz writes, regarding that which purifies an individual, the Torah says, only a spring or a pit wherein water collects, mikveh mayim, will be pure. That's in the 11th chapter of Leviticus. The sages established the minimum quantity of water in a ritual bath capable of purifying an individual at 40 seah. The water must be gathered by itself. The water must gather by itself. Not only does water drawn by hand fail to purify, in certain circumstances it can disqualify a ritual bath, previously fit to purify. So there was a ritual bath, 40 seah of water that was kosher, and then somebody comes and takes water in vessels and pours more water in. Takes a hose, perhaps, is considered drawn water. Just opening the spigot and turning on is kind of like drawn water. He takes buckets from a river and he comes and he pours it in, or he turns on the hose or whatever. That's called drawn water by hand. And that could, in certain cases, disqualify a kosher mikveh. The sages, Rabbi Steinsaltz continues, the sages only permitted immersion in drawn water in certain cases where one is impure by rabbinic law. So if somebody knows the difference between being impure from Torah law and impure from rabbinic law, and he deems himself impure from rabbinic law, he could in fact become pure by drawn water, as opposed to a kosher mikveh of natural rainwater or water that had come from a river and collected into a pool, and so forth. So Rav Papa v'Rav Huna Bered Rav Yehoshua v'Rava Berebi Bar Shmuel Kerichu Rifta Bahade Hadade. The Gemara relates how Rav Papa and Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua and Rava Bar Shmuel, Rav Huna the son of Yeshua and Rava Bar Shmuel were all eating bread together. Rav Papa said to them, Amar lahu Rav Papa, Havu li lididi levaruch. Rav Papa said to them, allow me to recite the grace after meals for the group, for I am ritually pure, because dinuful ilavai tisha kabim, because 9 kav of water had flown over me. Amar lahu Rava Berebi, or that is to say, Amar lahu Rava Bar Shmuel, Tanena b'mei devarim latzmo, aval achrim arbiim sa. Rav Bar Shmuel said to them, we learned in what case is this statement that 9 kav purifies said? In a case involving Torah study for himself. But in order to purify himself so that he may teach Torah to others, and by extension fulfill the obligation of others, he must immerse himself in 40 seah. Ela havuli lididi levaruch dinful ilavai arba'im sa. So Rav Bar Shmuel, Rav Papa said, I had 9 kav on me, so I should say, lead the grace after meals. The Rava Bar Rav Shmuel said, no, in order to teach to others, you need 40 sa, and I had 40 sava. I had 40 sa. How did you say it? Dinful alavai arbim sa. So he said, listen to how he said it. 40 sa of water fell over me. In other words, I immersed myself in a ritual bath. Now, it's interesting, fell over me could be from vessels, like we said earlier, as opposed to dipping in the water. But according to the translation of Rabbi Steinsaltz here, it means no, he actually immersed in a ritual bath. Rav Huna said to them, Amar lahu Rav Huna, havu li lididei levaruch, deleka ilavai lohai v'lohai. Rav Huna said, you should have me lead the grace after meals with the zimun, because I have neither had this nor that poured over me, because I have remained ritually pure. I didn't need to have any purification ritual. Rav Chama Tavil b'male Yoma defischa l'hotzi rabbi midei chovatan. It is also said that Rav Chama would immerse himself on Passover Eve, on the afternoon before the night of the Passover holiday, in order to fulfill the obligation of the masses. However, the Gemara concludes, V'leit hilchata kavate. The halacha is not accordance with his opinion that distinguishes between the purification for oneself and the purification for others. Now we go to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Haya omed betfila v'nizkar shu bal kere lo yafsik, eli yakatser. The next Mishnah contains various statements with regard to individuals with different types of ritual impurity, as well as the need to distance oneself from filth and impurity. One was standing in prayer, the Mishnah says, and he recalled that he experienced a seminal emission. And according to this opinion, he is prohibited from praying. According to this opinion, he is prohibited from praying. Let me start again. One who was standing in prayer and recalls that he experienced a seminal emission, and according to this opinion, he is prohibited from praying. He should not interrupt his prayer. Rather, he should abridge each individual blessing. He should pray in a more succinct manner, not dwell at length on the prayer. There's an abridged version, and there's the normal, longer version. He remembers, oh, I was a Balkari, I didn't go to the mikveh, so then he should be brief. Yarad, Litvol, im yachol la'alot lehitkasot v'likrot ad shelo te'eh hanetzach hama, ya'aleh v'yitkaseh v'yikra, Ya'aleh v'yitkaseh v'yikra. They stated a general principle. The Mishnah states this principle. One who descends to immerse himself is, if he is able to ascend, cover himself with a garment, get dressed, in other words, and recite the morning Shema before sunrise, he should descend, cover himself, and recite Shema. And if he doesn't have time, he's in the mikveh, oh, it's 2 minutes before sunrise, I have to say the Shema. Right? Or it's sunrise now. What does he do? If not, he should cover himself with water, in the water, and recite the Shema. Now, does this mean he should recite the Shema under the water? Perhaps if he has within reach of something to cover his head with, a kippah or a towel or something, that he could just put it on his head and have his head above the water so he could actually say the Shema, as long as he's not facing anybody who is nude, because you can't say the Shema in front of somebody who's not dressed. So, but here it seems to suggest, in this translation, it seems to suggest that he goes under the water and says the Shema. The Mishnah says simply, Yitkaseh b'mayim v'yikra. He should cover himself with water and read. So under the water. V'lo yitkaseh, lo b'mayim arayim, v'lo b'mei mishra. He may not, however, cover himself in either foul water or water in which flax was soaked, ad sheyatil l'tochan mayim, until he pours other water into it. V'kama yarchik mehen u'min hatzoah arba amot. And in general, how far must one distance himself from urine and feces in order to recite the Shema? At least 4 cubits, roughly 2 meters. The Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, Haya omed betfilah v'nizkar shu bal keri lo yafsik ela yikatser. Bright further elaborates on the first halach in the Mishnah. The sages taught, one who is standing in prayer and recalled that he has experienced a carry should not interrupt his prayer. Rather, he should abridge. Haya koreh b'torah v'nizkar shu bal keri. One who is reading the Torah and recalled that he had experienced a carry does not interrupt his reading. Enum mafsik v'oleh, but rather reads quickly with less than perfect diction. Ele megamgem v'koreh. The Breita says modern Hebrew would be stuttering in reading, but it means he's not enunciating the words correctly. Rabbi Meir Omer, Ein bal keri rashai likrot b'Torah yoter mishlosh psukim. According to Rabbi Meir, who often gives a much stricter opinion, he disagrees and says, one who experienced a seminal emission is not permitted to read more than 3 verses in the Torah, as one may read no fewer, as when you're talking about the public Torah readings in this case. And when one is doing a public Torah reading, the minimum amount that you can read for an aliyah in the synagogue when they're reading the Torah is 3 verses. You can't give an aliyah and read less than 3 verses. As one, after he completes 3 verses, he must stop and let someone else continue. He's reading, according to Rabbi Meir, he's reading, he remembers his Baal Keri, he has to finish 3 verses. After that he shouldn't read anymore, but he should let someone else read. Start in another Breita. Tanya idach, haya omed betfilah v'ra'at soa kenegdo, mahalech lefanav ad sheyiz rakena la'achorav arba amot. It was taught in another Breita, one who was standing in prayer and he saw feces before him must walk forward until he has placed it 4 cubits behind him. In other words, he should walk 4 cubits away from it. There's back to the feces, he walks away from it 4 cubits. The Gemara challenges this. Vahatanya, litzdadin. Wasn't it taught in another Breita that it is sufficient if he distances himself 4 cubits to the side, roughly 2 meters to the side? Lo kasha. The Gemara resolves this contradiction. It's not difficult. As that Breita was taught That Breita, which taught that it must be 4 cubits behind him, is referring to a case where it is possible for him to advance that distance. Lo kashya, had efshar. It was possible for him to walk 4 cubits in front of him. V'had lo efshar. And while that Breita, which taught that he may distance himself 4 cubits to the side, is referring to a case where it was not possible to advance 4 cubits, in which case he must at least step to the side 4 cubits. Haya mitpalalo matzat soa b'mokomo. Amar Rabba. Afal pi shechata tfilato tfila. The Gemara cites another halacha and says, one who was praying and later found feces in the place where he prayed. Rabbah said, although he committed a transgression, the transgression was the failure to examine the venue to determine that if it was indeed worthy of prayer, according to the Tosfot. His prayer is still a valid prayer, and he fulfilled his obligation. So, umatkif le Rava. So Rabbah said, if somebody, you're davening, and all of a sudden you look around and you see there's dog mess around where you're davening, somebody else's mess. He did an avera. According to the Tosfot, the avera was neglecting to check the place to make sure it's clean. However, he doesn't have to pray again. His prayer was a valid prayer. Fulfilled his obligation. That's Rabbah. Rava, on the other hand, said something else. He objected to this. He said, Matkif le Rava, hav zevach reshayim toeva. Rava strongly objects to his statement. He says, isn't it stated the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination? The more so as he offers it in depravity. That's from the 21st chapter of Proverbs. From which we derive that a mitzvah performed inappropriately is no mitzvah at all. If he didn't prepare the place and look around and make sure it was okay, he did as if he didn't pray. Zevach rashayim toeva. Ela amar Rava hoil v'chata afal pishit pelel tfilato toeva. Rather, Rava said, because the person committed a transgression, although he prayed, his prayer is an abomination, and he must pray again. Tana Rabbanan, Haya omed betfila umayim shotatin al birkav. One who stands in prayer, the sages taught in a Breita, one who was standing in prayer when for some reason urine is flowing on his knees. Posek ad shichlu hamayim v'chozer mitpalel. He must interrupt his prayer until the urine ceases and then resume praying. Lehechan chozer. Gemara asks, to where in the prayer does he return when he resumes his prayer? Chadamar chozer l'rosh. Rav Chisda, Rav Hamnuna. There were two opinions, Rav Chisda's opinion and Rav Hamnuna's opinion. One of them said, chozer l'rosh, he has to go back to the beginning of the prayer. V'chadamar l'makom shepasak. The other said he must return to the point where he stopped. And what is this urine flowing on his knees all about? Both the anus and the urethra are controlled by muscles, which in the course of the maturation process one learns to control and relax when necessary. As part of growing up, the baby learns how to be potty trained, and he can control his urination and his bowel movements. At the same time, there are situations of sudden fear and pain that can cause one to lose control over these muscles and lead to a spontaneous release of urine or excrement. According to halacha, one who recites the Shema at the same time with regards to the Amida prayer, and he loses control of his bladder function, he must suspend his recitation until the flow stops, and then he has to start his prayer over again, according to the opinion of Rava.